Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up and talking about everything that I read in the month of September. Now August was the month that my TBR kind of collapsed on me a little bit, so this month I kind of just decided to throw my TBR out the window and just kind of change it up a little bit and throw in some additional books. So these are mostly things that I haven't really talked about in a previous video, barring somebody reads, but gonna talk through everything that I read, what I thought, and I'll confirm what I do have reviews for out. Really quick, I do want to specifically note though, another thing that's not a book review, but something really fun that I did do in the month of September, and that is the Fantasy Mad Lib tag, which I did with Walker Writes 7 and Andrew's Wizardly Reads. It was a collaborative tab that we came up, and Walker had put a lot of the stuff together. It was a ton of fun going through. There's like a Mad Lib at the end. There's some really crazy funny bloopers, which had me cackling even though I was there when I rewatched them. So definitely check that out. I will have that link below. With that, let's get into the actual wrap-up part. So I mentioned August was kind of a mess, and I did have Priory of the Orange Tree I started in August, and I have not finished it. I did read the first chapter I mentioned of Curse of the Mist Wraith, and I haven't gone back to it. I really enjoyed that one. I kind of was just wetting my teeth on it. I wasn't planning on reading that because that's super long. Priory is one I do still plan to finish because I didn't hard DNF'd it. I kind of just soft DNF'd it at the time because I wasn't enjoying it enough to want to continue versus reading a lot of other things. And I also plan on doing some Discworld that I didn't get to that month. We'll kind of talk there. But I didn't start to read any of those things. I do still need to read Dragons of Spring Dawning 2, which is part of the buddy read that I'm involved in with some live shows. We pushed back when the live show was going to be, so it's going to be sometime like mid-October. So I just decided I would push that off too and read some other things. So that'll be coming, but I'm going to stick with, I think, pretty much the lack of TBR format when I go into October as well. So let's start with what I did read. The first thing I read was Dragonslayer by Duncan M. Hamilton. This, I've talked about a few times. I really enjoy the cover, and I love the cover for the whole trilogy, and that is the sole reason that I own this trilogy, because I was really honestly excited to do this one. I did do a review for this. It was a joint review with this and Burning Roses, which was a second book that I read that was just kind of something I was looking for shorter. Briefly, Dragonslayer was a fun book. It is extremely predictable, and it is absolutely intended as kind of a retelling of the retired drunk has to come back and slay the dragon type trope. So this really is something I liked it. This was certainly nothing that was amazing, new, or like really impressive, but it also was not trying to hide what it is. It's a book called Dragonslayer. It makes it very clear on the back that, yeah, it's that classic, ex-hero has and now a drunk and has to kind of come back and do it, and he's not put out for the job, but somehow things will work out. There are some other elements that are being set up too. A lot of them still felt fairly tropey, but this is really, if you're looking for something that's just kind of a fun classic tropey fantasy where a guy goes on quest to kill dragon, that's what this is. And once again, it's not trying to be anything else. It makes it very clear that you know what you're getting into when you read this, basically. So I think it works for that type of book. I'll be interested enough to continue and see if it does start doing something a little bit more as we get further into the trilogy. Now, Burning Roses, which I noted I also read and did in a review with this, that one I liked a bit less, and it was also kind of a retelling, but it was a combination of Red Riding Hood and some Chinese folklore that I wasn't super familiar with. And that one didn't really land that well with me. The main reason was I don't care for retellings a whole lot. And it really focused on the Red Riding Hood aspect, as well as kind of like trying to make it into a grim, more adult version of several other well-known fairy tales. And it kind of clashed with the other side, which was also specifically the story of Rosa, who's Red Riding Hood, and Hu Yi, who was the character from Chinese folklore. I really wanted to know about Hu Yi a whole lot more. There were some reasons for the narrative that we don't find out more about this character until the end, but even though I know you're kind of combining fairy tales, but I felt like we spent a lot of time retreading in a different light, albeit, but retreading fairy tales I'm familiar with. And the much more interesting, at least to me, half of the story did not get as much love. So there was some conflicting tones throughout, and it just overall did not land very well with me. I did read a physical copy of it. I have since unhauled it, so I no longer have it. But that's really where I felt with that one. Next up, and the next two actually are Kindle ones, so I don't have a physical copy, but the next thing I read was Nightfall by Daniel Barnett. And oh my gosh, was that fantastic, and so different from anything else I've ever really read. It was very unique. It had a lot of things that did kind of put me in mind of almost like a sci-fi show with horror elements. It is classified as horror, but I absolutely loved it. It is a novella. It is a very quick read. It's like 2.5 hours. I highly recommend you check it out. I do have a review for it as well, which is mostly me just gushing about it, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing that here. I'll link all the reviews I mentioned down below, but it was so good and it was so short, and I'm most likely going to binge the rest of the series at some point in October because I just enjoyed it that much. I was not expecting to enjoy it that much. Leslie from the Dirty Narrative had recommended it extremely highly, and then Andrew Reads read it. I usually have a very similar taste to him, so when he recommended it extremely highly, I'm like, alright, I'm going to try this out. I thought maybe this would be something where it's a little more his taste, but no, I just really enjoyed it. It's hard to say like a specific type of reader should read and enjoy it, because it is absolutely not the type of thing I normally read, but it worked for me on basically just every level. The characters were great, just the darkness of the world that was being set up, the story, every piece of it I found very interesting, and I'm just so excited to read more of Daniel Barnett, and so I just once again really recommend that you check that one out. The next thing that I ended up reading was Unsouled by Will White. This was also something a little bit different from what I normally read. This one's considered a progression fantasy, is my understanding, and that's because it's specifically like based on somebody who is like leveling up. I've also heard it compared to like the novelization of anime. I don't really do anime, so I don't know a ton about that, but it did kind of have that feeling to me, if that makes sense, even with me not being super familiar with it. This was one I enjoyed. It was like a 3.5, so I wasn't crazy about it, because the first half of it felt very predictable and familiar, although it was really doing a lot of setup to kind of branch out, and from what I've heard, it really branches out from there. I do have the first 9 books in this series on Kindle, so I will absolutely be continuing this one as well, and interested to see where it goes. I don't know if I like this as much as some people do, because I know this series has a huge, like, very loyal following. It's kind of like a cult classic. I think it sounds like just the people who love it absolutely love it. I'm not there yet, but I've heard too that people say it does improve as it goes along, so I'll be interested to see that. I do also have a review for Unsouled on my channel as well, which I will link if you want to check that out. Then we go to something I did not care for too much, but I had a good long while back when I hauled this book. BiblioShark, who's around the Discord and is a subscriber, had commented saying that he'd be down to buddy read it, and so I'm like, I could read another short book. If you haven't been able to tell, everything I've talked about so far has been pretty short, and that's kind of what I wanted. I had been really slowing down. I'd been reading a lot of big books, so I wanted to focus on shorter books. But that book was The Stone in the Skull by Elizabeth Bear. I had actually, even more recently, gotten the second book in this series because it was just really cheap, and it was kind of one of the things I had on a book outlet order. But I did pretty hard DNF this very quickly. So did the person I was buddy reading it with. He also just was not feeling it at all. He also happened to have the second book too, so it's pretty funny. I think we're both going to be unhauling. This was not for me. It just was very odd. It did turn out, now I will absolutely say this because I was not aware of it, this is a follow-up trilogy. It takes place in the same world as a different trilogy, which is the Eternal Sky trilogy. I did not realize that at the time of buying it. Looking it up afterwards, you are supposed to be able to read this independently. I can't help but feel that having read the other trilogy may have helped, though, because there's a lot that's thrown at you, and it's a strange mix that I've never quite seen, where some things you're given absolutely no information or explanation for, just stuff's just thrown at you, and then at the same time you're like being info dumped about other things, but not necessarily the things that you need to know. it just felt very disjointed right off the bat. And I'm going to read a quick passage because this is what, for both of us, made us DNF, because there's so much in here, and this is only the start of chapter 3. The chapters were pretty long, but this was the start of chapter 3, where it's just kind of like, it seems to be nonsense masquerading as like really deep and philosophical, but after reading this, I just decided this was not for me. So here's the excerpt. There was a word for a mark that remained after that which made it had moved on. A path worn in earth, ink on a page, a bruise on skin, a dry riverbed, a scar. Or, well, not precisely a word for the thing, but a word for the act of so marking. A word that by extension meant the thing that acted to cause the mark, and the thing that was acted upon and so became a thing that was marked, and also the mark itself, and precisely and significantly the action of marking that forever linked these things and joined them into a continuum even long after they had moved apart again. That nice long run-on sentence, I don't know. I read that and I'm just like, what did I just read? And honestly, everything else that had been going on and just the lack of explanation of anything that seemed important and the large amount of exposition about things that seemed very unimportant just kind of made me feel like this is not for me. So like I said, I will be unhauling this book as well as the second one. It just kind of is what it is. Not for me, and that's okay. Let me know. I would be curious if somebody has read either this book and the sequel or the original trilogy. Maybe I was being too harsh, but I don't think this is what I'm going to come back to regardless, but I would be interested to hear if somebody's a fan of this. Let me know if maybe it's not my taste, which very well could be, or if like it's done this way for a reason. I am just a little bit curious. So after I read all of those shorter books, I decided, okay, it's time I need to actually get to the buddy reads, which were the sole things I was keeping as sort of a TBR. And there were some pretty long ones to end out the month. Starting with Stone of Farewell by Tad Williams. This is book 2 in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Is a part of a buddy read that we're doing on the Wizardly Duo Discord. We did the first book, Dragonbone Chair, in August, this book September. And then for October and November, we're doing 2 Green Angel Tower, because it's just barely on screen there, but it is massive. So you get 2 months for that one. So I'll be starting that probably toward the end of October and then into November is when I'll be reading it. I was really excited to read this one. I enjoyed Dragonbone Chair a lot. It had a pretty slow start, and when your book is 600 plus pages, and I'm just going to say the text is pretty small, this one's under 600 by just a little bit. That one was over by a bit. So this is a little shorter, but it had a pretty slow start, but I found myself really enjoying it because Tad Williams has excellent prose, for one, is just very enjoyable to read. There were so many beautiful descriptions and the way things were written, and this is very much classic fantasy, but what really surprised me is not only have I seen so many elements here that I recognize that other authors later took inspiration from, it's just the fact that despite this being a very classic fantasy story and being, if I'm not mistaken, from the 80s, let's do a quick fact check. This is 1990. So maybe the first one had to have been sometime in the 80s. I thought this was slightly older. This is a different printing, so I don't know. But anyway, this is an older series. This definitely has a very classic feel. But some people, even in the first book, were pointing out like there's some huge inspiration taken from George R.R. Martin for Song of Ice and Fire. I specifically in here noticed inspiration that Robert Jordan took in Wheel of Time. There were some specific, just kind of smaller elements and just parts of the overall story that were used, for the most part, very differently in the Wheel of Time, but I found to be kind of unmistakingly from this, at least to me, how it seemed. Faithful and the Fallen is another series that seemed to really take some inspiration from this, and so many other series, barring A Song of Ice and Fire, which I don't care for, but so many other series that I really do enjoy and have absolutely loved. I should mention Robin Hobb and Realm of the Elderlings also feels like it took some inspiration from here, so some favorites in there that took inspiration from this, which just like makes me appreciate it even more, because I'm seeing these elements and I'm like, wow, some of my other like absolute favorite authors apparently loved this also. And I really found Stone of Farewell to just be so amazing. I loved this book. Dragonbone Chair I really liked, but this book really upped the ante for me. I did not. Some others thought that this one started slow too. I didn't really feel that. It started with the aftermath of what happened in the first book, and it just was going the entire time. There was so much that happened here. Really moving forward with the story, and I'm very excited to get to the Green Angel Tower. I imagine that one's going to have some slow parts just because of the sheer length. But honestly, this one really kept moving. And just once again, with the prose is beautiful. I'm enjoying the story, and it just is also it's pretty dark, and it's more of like fade to black or implied. There's not a lot of explicit things that are talked about as dark, but there is a lot of darker elements to this story as well, especially when you go from the first book with how it ended. And I'm not going to talk any spoilers here at all, just for the record. But like some stuff really happened at the end of the book, and this kind of keeps it going. And it's just some of the elements too. It's when you look back, it's having like the darker fantasy and like the grimdark genre, which I know some people argue it's not a genre. I'm going to refer to it that way for this purpose. But this also seems like another one of those series that may have been a precursor. And I imagine there are plenty of authors who write quote-unquote grimdark who also probably took inspiration from this series as well. So I've been very impressed. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to reading the last one. I did do a review for Dragonbone Share. I'm not planning on doing a dedicated review for book 2, just because I found that most people aren't really looking for a dedicated review for second books in the series. So that's why I'm not planning on doing for that book. Next up, I read, which ended the month on like such a high note, but also a low note, which you'll understand when I tell you it was Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the third book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and it was so good. I absolutely loved every second of this book. And this is, once again, I've talked before, Robin Hobb is not an author that I think is for everyone. You've probably seen that fans of Realm of the Elderlings, it's usually one of their favorites, and they will praise it all day and night, and for very good reason. Robin Hobb is a terrific author. Her prose is fantastic, especially in the Fitz books, because they are written differently from the Lifeship Traders books. The prose is fantastic, the story and the characters are great, and this was completing the second Fitz trilogy, and really completes what I'm going to consider the first sequence. There were 9 books, and this really, really felt like an ending to me. And it turns out, when looking into it, Robin Hobb did stop writing Realm of the Elderlings for a while after this, did some other stuff until coming back to it later. But it really feels like this absolutely could have been an ending to the entire series. It pulled together and just recontextualized so many events from both the Farseer trilogy and the Lifeship Traders trilogy. Which is why, once again, you really should read it in order. I know some people didn't care for Farseer and so just went right to Lifeship. Lifeship spoils Farseer, and this spoils both completely. Plus, it still fits. But I absolutely, just the characters, the depth of emotion, nobody can make me feel like Robin Hobb can. She just gets you right in the soul. There was so much that was just horribly sad and depressing with this book, but I still loved every minute of it. Now, the thing I will note, too, is that in kind of a Hobb fashion, but a little more to the extreme this time, the climax you get to when you still have about 200 pages left of the book. And so the rest of it is mostly falling action, although there still is a lot going on. I absolutely loved all of those pages. There was a lot of stuff being wrapped up, a lot of stuff still happening and changing, and just everything that happened, it was just so perfect, and I loved it so much. And so I completely get if you're not a Robin Hobb fan. I absolutely do. If you love slow, beautifully written, emotionally charged, character-focused stories, I can't even talk apparently, but I can't recommend this highly enough. I'm thinking about it again. And so I absolutely love this. I'm really excited. This is part of a buddy read that's been ongoing for a while on Megan's channel, Megan's Reading Revelations, with others also. And we are going to be taking a break, I think, until we do the Rain Wilds later this year, maybe in like December, is what it sounds like. So I'll be taking a break, focusing on some other stuff, which I am completely okay with, because although I'm excited to read the rest of the series, this, like I said, really had a lot of finality to it, and I applaud Hobb as well. With her series, she does such a great job of making it seem like a complete ending, while also it's not like it's just like leaving the door open for a sequel like you see in a lot of movies. It's a complete ending, but it shows you that things are going to continue on And so there's always room for more stories. I've heard she might even write more after the ones that are out, which I'll absolutely read. But just beautiful, hauntingly beautiful. Oh my gosh. I still have yet to cry reading a book, but if anybody can do it, it'd be Robin Hobb, because she hurts my soul. So, after doing that, I did decide I tried to just jump right into something else, and I'm like, I just couldn't. I struggle, especially after finishing the last book on the Robin Hobb series. I just kind of get like a book hangover, and it's not quite a slump. It's just like I'm so content, and I'm just so like emotionally drained from reading the books. I needed something a little bit lighter, so I did decide to pick up Lords and Ladies. I'm not very far into it yet. I started this last night, which was the 29th. I'm actually filming this on the... Is it the 30th today? Yeah, it's the 30th today. Okay, I had to think about it for a minute. So I'm filming this on the 30th. So this, most likely, even though it's a Discworld book, it won't take me very long to read. Most likely won't be done tonight. Unless I magically have a lot more reading time than I think I'm going to have. But I'm planning on reading this and then kind of just jumping into October and seeing what I decide to read. Because the beautiful thing about October is I actually don't have any specific things on my list that I need to read, which I'm very excited about. I've needed just kind of... It's been nice to have kind of a break from the TBRs. Focus a little more on, I guess, mode reading. Just kind of reading shorter stuff, other stuff, trying different things. It's been really nice. I had been doing TBRs because I wanted to read specific books and get through certain things. But I'm kind of like going back to just sort of reading whatever, which is what I had normally done in the past before I did any of the booktube stuff. And there's a lot of stuff I do still kind of want to read, so I'll mention some of those things, but the only specific thing, like I already mentioned, that I need to read is at least starting to Green Angel Tower, because that's the October-November buddy read for the channel, and I will absolutely be reading that. Some other things I want to read, and I didn't grab any of these books, but I already mentioned Nightmareland, which is the series that Nightfall is a part of by Daniel Barnett. There's a good chance I'll binge all of those in October. I also want to read She Dreams in Blood, which is the second book in the Obsidian Path series by Michael R. Fletcher, and I will 100% read that because I've been really excited to get to it as well. Some other just books I've had that I want to get to include like Leviathan Wakes, because I've needed to start The Expanse for forever. And I've had the book for not a crazy long time, but I've had it for long enough. So I'd like to get that started. The Coward by Stephen Arion is another one that I kind of would like to get read. The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, which once again, a complete cover by it, but I'm just curious to read it. So that's one that I may consider getting to. I might read the second book in the Dragonslayer series, which is Knight of the Silver Circle. I might read that too if I feel like throwing in a shorter book, just because, once again, short books are nice sometimes. So those are ones. I will probably also, I may throw in some more Discworld. After Lords and Ladies, I have Men at Arms, and then I think Soul Music is the next book. So if I decide to pop in some more Discworld, those will be what I do. In addition, I will be making sure to at least try to get some effort into Pirate of the Orange Tree, which I just realized is slightly off screen. But I may try to finish that. And then also I will be at some point reading Dragons of Spring Dawning, which is not a crazy long book either, for the live show for that when we get that going. So those are the things that I may read. Oh, also, and the Dark Angel trilogy, which I don't have handy. It's up on top of a shelf, which is just an older book I got that I'm interested to read. As another honorable mention of things that I might read. But it's definitely a might read. I'm not really, besides Dragons of Spring Dawning and starting to Green Angel Tower, those are the only things that I'm committing to, because I'm kind of just enjoying, like I said, just being a little bit more random. I'm doing a bit more of just kind of reading whatever I feel like reading at the time to get through some more stuff. But I don't want to take too much time for that because there's other things in the series I definitely want to get to. So I may go back to TBRs here soon, just because I like to kind of set out what I'm going to read, but I've also been enjoying not doing that. So I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll find out if I end up doing a TBR video for November, or I may talk about it in my October wrap-up at the end of that month. But that is my wrap-up for the month of September. Those are the things that I read, and just kind of a brief look at what I might read. Once again, I will have links to everything I talked about that I have reviews for, as well as the Fantasy Mad Lib video which once again I highly recommend. It was so much fun to do. It's kind of a longer video, but I think it's worth it. It was a lot of fun. So I'll have that out linked below, and then the reviews for the videos that I did review that I talked about. So definitely feel free to check any of those out if you want to hear more about any of the books that I talked about. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Of course, check the link, as always, in the description for the Wizardly Duo Discord. And check out if you want to chat with us there. We have a ton of fun there. There's always so much going on. It's not too late if you want to like binge read the first Memory Star and Thorn books and jump in on that buddy read. We also have a ton of other buddy reads going on, both official and unofficial. We literally have a buddy read channel called the Unofficial Buddy Read channel, where anybody can just be like, hey, you want to buddy read this? And so we have people all the time in our Discord who end up buddy reading things together because they just find other people who want to read it. And so it's really awesome. A great place to look for that. Just talk about books or anything, so check it out. And of course, if you'd like to see more of my content and have not already, make sure to subscribe.